Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's
Hello, everybody.
episode of Mouse Minds. We are here live for you on YouTube. Someone has an echo. I don't know who has their volume on outside there. Thanks. I flipped someone here. I'll flip each of you on, and we'll see who has the echo. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this week. We are live for you on YouTube. We are also live for you um on our Facebook page and my personal Facebook page. So we're live on all those different platforms. I just checked we are streaming, so we are good to go there. Now, I am actually recording this show from Disney Springs because I never made it out of that crowd from the other night seeing the drone show. I'm kidding. I actually made it out. It took a while, but I made it out. And we'll talk about that in a second. But this week's episode, we'll mention that we're not. It's not a whole episode about that, but I will mention that in a minute here. But this week's episode, we're switching gears here. We're gonna go to the West Coast today, and talk about tips and tricks for a magical trip to Disneyland. And before we actually started the show, we were kind of doing a little brainstorming session, and we basically started the show without you guys. I mean, we were already having a conversation about where to stay, what to do, everything else. So, we basically had that going on as well. Yeah, so we are doing that. We're going to go with that. But to kick things off here, I just want to say real briefly here, if you haven't, if you're coming to Orlando this summer at any time, or Walt Disney World this summer at any time, please go and see the Dreams That Soar present or drone show at Disney Springs. It is incredible. Please be mindful though that Disney Springs is clearly not set up for large crowds. They do not handle them well. Please have a lot of patience when leaving Disney Springs, because I can honestly tell you, it took me about an hour and a half to from I mean, I did have a little snack in there, but even then, it leaving was an absolute mess. Trying to find food after the show was over, restaurants were. Yeah, I went to Deluxe Burger and they told me it was an hour wait for just a hamburger. Just to get there, they told me that the Blaze Pizza did not want. The guy at the door for Blaze Pizza told me not to come to the restaurant. I cannot make this up. I have witnesses that were with me, and witnesses that actually work for Disney and were like, "That's very un
That's
Disney like."
that's
Yeah,
amazing. I don't think I've ever seen it that bad.
yeah. So, yeah, it was a very interesting experience. And you know what? For those of you, for the rest of the bunch here, I'm gonna throw this up here just so you guys can get an idea. For those of you that are watching live, and that's another thing too, that I would like to work on too. Possibly, I'm not promising anything because I don't know how I would make this happen yet. I was thinking about it. You guys can let us know, of course, if it's something that you would like. But I was thoroughly thinking of doing taking our show and maybe making a video podcast out of it. But we do broadcast on YouTube, so you can rewatch the live stream on there. But if not, maybe we'll put something that you can listen to in your podcast platform. But I want to show you guys just real briefly here. I actually have the photo up right now. So let me just get this up here so you guys can see um, what I'm looking at here. Give me 1 second here. So you guys can see what I was dealing with the other night, because it was really bad. So let me just hold on 1
And when you're getting that, I want to know where you are when you took this picture too. So make sure
second.
because I was
So
like,
this was not a photo that I took myself. This is a photo
okay.
that someone took of the area, but I was definitely in this crowd, and it was really bad. Now I will tell you, as far as the show goes, there's really nowhere there. They do have cordon space or spaces cordoned off behind, uh, like Summer House on the Lake and Starbucks. That whole little strip there on the west side. They do have it cordoned off for you to, if you get there early enough, to actually have seating for the show. But if you guys can see, I know
Oh
uh,
my God.
that was a sea of people when I left, and I'm telling you, like, there was the section behind, um, that whole row from the balloon all the way down to behind House of Blues was all reserved seating for the show. There was I mean, that was packed. Plus, there was a giant field to the left of that they filled up with people. And it the show is not a permanent thing. You can tell because they just had like speaker stands everywhere that were playing the audio for the show. So it's not they didn't have it like wired into the speakers. Now this doesn't include the people that were watching the show from the parking garage because people were watching it from the orange parking garage as well. There's no audio up there, but they were watching it from the parking garage. Now I can personally tell you, I when I left the show started at 9. It was probably done about 9:15. I had to go get something to eat afterwards. Like I said, Deluxe Burger was an hour wait. I got into Blaze Pizza. The cast member at the door told me not to eat there because he said, we don't have any tables, and I just did it anyways, and I finally found a table with the help of some friends, but it was an absolute mess. And when I got to my car, that was when the second show was starting, I believe at 10:30, and it took me an hour to leave the parking lot. I did not leave the parking lot for a straight hour. It was just cars trying to leave, and it was an absolute nightmare. So just be very mindful if you do go. Um, Take Disney transportation if you can, if you're at a hotel. Maybe think about going to Saratoga Springs, which is on the other side. Apparently, you can see the show over there. Um, I I don't know what the audio situation is like because I haven't gone over there yet, but I plan to explore it because some of my other friends we were talking about parking over there and having dinner there and then watching the show. So I'll let you know how that goes. But it is an amazing show. But just keep in mind, Springs is a free park, and this is a show, a nighttime show at a free park. So it's going to be very crowded. I don't see the crowds getting any less anytime soon. So just keep that in mind.
I was gonna say it's not even summer crowds yet. So,
Yeah.
oh my, I can't. I mean, they obviously hit it out of the park. This was a home
hmm
run. Uh, so, and especially, here's my question: would you do it again?
Yes, I
Like,
would
even
do it.
if you had
I
to
would
wait
if
that hour and a half?
if I knew that I had time to kill and could walk around Disney Springs, and I didn't wasn't in a rush, then absolutely yes, I would do it again. It was that good of a show. I would totally put up with the
That's
crowds
great.
to see that. As far as drone shows go, this actually shows how far we've come, and we've come a long way because drone shows tend to be generally slow or have been in the past, where the drones kind of reshape themselves into whatever figure they're trying to draw next. This one doesn't do that. Like the way I don't know if it's the synchronization of the lights on the drones, but I mean things happen really fast. Like they shift from character to character really fast. um, you know, when there's a scene where Baymax switches from Baymax to his costume with the jetpack and everything, and that happens like in a second. Like you don't even know that it's like the music comes on and he instantly changes. So I've never seen a drone show um this perfect before. This is the peak of what we have for drone shows. Now, I know that Universal is going to have them when they open Epic Universe. I assume it'll be it's probably they're probably the same company. So I would imagine that it'll be just as good. But yes, it is totally worth doing. If you're staying there, um, totally check it out. Just keep in mind the crowds are going to be crazy.
I think drone shows have really improved. We had a drone show here for Harry Potter at
Mhm.
Universal Studios in the West during Comic Con last year in San Diego. They had a Futurama drone show, and my son's graduation
Ooh,
at USC had a drone show.
Futurama, that's awesome.
So I think that just the technology gets better.
Mhm,
It's a great way to encompass probably a location where you can't do fireworks, or it's
mhm.
just a little bit different, and so a little bit more integration. I was just curious. You said that there's music, but people in the orange um, structure didn't have music. Do you
Nope.
feel that you can still get the
No.
complete
I
benefit
mean,
without the
you
music?
can see what the characters are, but missing the audio is I would say the if you don't I mean, it's like taking away like 80% of the show. Yes, you can make out the characters, but with any Disney nighttime show, we all know that the soundtrack is always iconic. Look at the Electrical Parade and look at um, oh my god, the parade at California Adventure, Paint the Night. Those soundtracks are iconic, and that is a big portion of this show. So I really feel like you're really doing yourself a disservice if you watch it from the parking garage because you're not going to hear that amazing audio because it really does tie in the show. And then of course they have a specific song for that show. So yes, you definitely have to watch it with the audio.
Is it possible, do you think, now that this is out there,
Hmm.
pull it up on your phone on YouTube, pop in your headphones, start it when the show starts,
Absolutely.
use that audio while you're up on the garage?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely think you could do that. It might be a hair out of sync depending on, when you start it. But that's absolutely an option. You could definitely do that. And the cool thing is, one of the things with drones is with drone shows is the beginning of the show where the drones actually are heading up into the sky because they have this big field that's walled off, where the drones are actually sitting. So when they fly into the sky, that's one of those things like you either see or you don't see. They either try to hide it or they kind of show you. And Disney, I think, kind of knocked it out of the park with this because there was some nice music that led up, and you saw them kind of launching into the sky, and it was almost, it felt like to me something out of maybe like Peter Pan, like Second Star to the Right, like the way the drones. I don't know how to describe it, but even that part of it was awesome. So I, you know, like I said, drone shows have come a long way since the first time we saw them many years ago. I remember they did the first ever drone show was at Disney Springs, I think, or well, not the first ever, but like the first major show at like a theme park was at Disney Springs, when they did that test. 2017, 2018, I don't remember what it was, um, but now that we have um more technology, especially with I'm sure that AI, plays a big role in this as well, kind of figuring out patterns and things like that. And there's so much more that they can do now. So it's just it's insane. Like the show is just insane. So please, 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 if you're at Disney, go check it out. I honestly, I've never seen it in person. The electrical parade in the sky at Paris, Disneyland Paris. But just from my experience, or what I saw in the videos, I would say that there is more. That one is more castle projection based, where this is just drones. Obviously, because they have what are they going to project on? And I think that this is much much better, much better. So
Excellent.
all right, so let's move on to this week's topic. This week we are definitely talking about Disneyland. We're going to give Luella a chance to really chime in here. I've been to Disneyland 4 times now, and I loved every trip that I had. I most of the trips that I took there, what I would do personally is when it comes to hotels is I would essentially do 1 or 2 nights at the Disneyland Hotel or Paradise Pier or something like that. Never stayed at the Grand Californian, eaten there, but I haven't stayed there. And then I would typically stay the rest off property, around in the Anaheim area because I think that you find the best deals in that area. A lot of times, especially with like the Howard Johnson, which is literally right across the street from Disneyland. It's honestly a quicker walk from there than it is from the Disneyland Hotel to the Disneyland Resort. So there are a lot of amazing options over there. It's completely different than Walt Disney World because with Walt Disney World you're kind of in that bubble and you cannot, unless you rent a car, you're not necessarily leaving that bubble. Where Disneyland you're in the middle of a city and you have things all surrounding it. So it's a completely different experience and I enjoy it thoroughly. So um I don't know if you want to go first, Luella, and kind of talk about some of your, you know,
Yeah, I having stayed at both the Disneyland Resort and at Walt Disney World, I would really say it's not as much of a bubble as it is at Walt Disney World. And part of the reason is there are only 3 hotels. one of them actually wasn't even an original Disneyland hotel. I mean, like Disneyland Resort Hotel. They purchased that. That was a hotel that belonged to another company during the 1984 Olympics. And so they purchased it and Disneyfied it. And you said Paradise Pier. It's actually now called Pixar Pier. So they
Yeah, I apologize.
rethemed the whole thing. And surprise, surprise, when they made a Pixar Pier, the price really went up. And this is supposed to be the value one.
That's the value one, right?
Yeah, this is the value one, but they rethemed it, and there's also a private entrance into.
Well, I can honestly
Yeah.
say the last time I stayed at it was when it was the Paradise Pier Hotel.
Yeah.
And it I will say it was definitely showing its age a little bit back
Hmm.
then. It was not I wouldn't it just was not the it felt more like if you've ever stayed at Disney World and stayed at one of the properties near Disney Springs, one of the Hotel Plaza Boulevard properties, it felt more like that than an actual Disney resort. It didn't
Yes.
maybe that's just my experience coming from Walt Disney World, and how we have things like the Grand Floridian and Contemporary. Now, Disneyland Hotel and the Grand Californian definitely had that experience and felt like that, but this felt like you're right. It was exactly like you said. It was a hotel that had been rebranded
Yeah.
and Disneyfied.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
an
So
accurate description.
when you walk through it, it's kind of oddly made. It just seems
Yeah.
kind of weird. But there is a private entrance, which is fantastic. Same with Grand California. There's a private entrance into Disney
Mhm.
California. So that's a little perk. But is it worth hundreds of dollars of perks? And I think that's one of the beauties of Disneyland is those hotels across the street from Harbor can actually be a closer walk than some of the three hotels. But is it nice to be in that bubble? Yes, it's nice. But is it, you have to kind of, as everything, weigh it. Do you want to stay at All Star or do you want to stay at Contemporary? You're going to weigh the benefits versus the risk. You're in that bubble still, but do you want that convenience? And so what's nice about it is you can have convenience at a lower price point.
I would
And
say even though you are somewhat in the bubble, um, you still know staying at, like, let's say, for example, the Disneyland Hotel, that you're surrounded by a city. So,
yes,
in my honest opinion, it's not. I mean, I always say you should stay there at least once because I mean it's the Disneyland Hotel. I mean, you have the headboards that light up with the fireworks. You have I don't know how the lobby looks now, but they had the giant teacups in the lobby. They had there was a map of Disneyland on the wall as you walk in. So the theming, everything, the monorail pool, everything like that is amazing. And I certainly appreciate that. Um but I will say, like, it's something, like, after I've done it once, like, unless it's a really good deal, I really don't have to do it again. I'd rather take the money that I could save, from going to the staying at a less expensive resort and put that into other things inside
yeah.
the park instead of that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. They also have built the new DVC towers there. And if you ever have the opportunity to check out those DVC towers, the theming is amazing, like amazing. It's just like Tiana and all that stuff.
Mhm.
It's just amazing. But those are DVC towers versus the other three towers of the Disneyland Hotel. So I do agree with you. Stay there once, but I mean, sometimes when you look at the price, you can stay at Hyatt House across the street and have a kitchen, and it's like a
Mhm.
quarter of the price, like half, three-fourths less for your whole family. So that's the great thing is you have a lot of different options and you're not far. You're really not
Yeah.
far. And some of these, even if they're across the street, they still have a shuttle.
Yeah.
So it's like surprising.
One
So
other thing about those off-property hotels, and I
mhm.
know Disney World, same thing. Sometimes they'll at least even give you a complimentary breakfast.
Yes,
And
yes,
something as
Mhm.
simple as eggs in the morning,
Mhm.
instead of having to schlep down and buy $20 Disney eggs. You give me a
Yeah.
free breakfast so I have a little energy in the morning. I'll go
Yeah.
pick up a lunch in the park.
The last time I stayed in the area, we stayed there for, uh 5 days, and 2 of those days were at Disneyland Hotel, and the rest were at the Hilton by the convention center. And
Mhm.
honestly, that was about half the price at the time
Yeah.
of the Disneyland Hotel, and it was way better. And I had probably one of the best breakfasts that I've ever had. They being so close to Mexico, they had the huevos rancheros, they had the beans, they had everything, and I was like, I was in heaven. So honestly, like it was a much better experience for half the price.
Yeah.
Right, and when you're traveling with a large family, and looking to cut corners where you can, I feel like you more than get your money's worth for the properties right across the street. You know, I'm always looking for a breakfast with
Yeah.
anywhere from 1 to 5 kids, however many are going. I'm always looking for, like, the amenities that they have, all of those kinds of things, and, I mean, I have stayed by myself, I've stayed with others. I've never Here's a true story, never stayed at a Disney resort in California. I've only stayed at the off property, but oftentimes I don't even have a car and I'm able to walk. Some of the hotels even have little convenience stores. There are lots of little
Mhm.
restaurants in the area. So I feel like it's completely doable.
The
I
Yes.
was
the
even looking at a house nearby. I haven't done that yet. That
Yeah.
might be the next time.
Yeah.
Just looking at a house a few blocks away,
Mhm,
Airbnb, and be able to walk over to Disneyland.
Yeah. I it's definitely not a necessity.
mhm,
Like I said, there's only 3. And so
yeah,
because there's only 3, they can charge as much as they can charge because there's not a lot of
yeah,
rooms. Whereas I feel like at Walt Disney World, there's so many more rooms. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just really exhausting to take like a bus, like after you're done, like take you so long. But here you can walk across the street and be at
yeah,
your room. So there's different, there's
and
options for everyone. I mean, who doesn't love staying at the Disneyland Resort, right? I mean, and like
well,
in the bubble, but
and really
that's
the only thing that you can't access really at the Disneyland Resort other than the rooms, is like the pool. I mean, all the restaurants are open up to you. There's really not a lot at at
Mhm.
like those resorts that you can't access by not staying there. So you really, like I mean, the Grand Californian, yes, at the time, it did have that entrance, when I last went there because I went to Storytellers, um, and they did have that entrance which was awesome, to get into the park. But other than that, like there really wasn't that much there that would entice me to want to stay there other than like having that entrance. And I guess it is really cool to be able to see, if you have a room facing the park, you can see the Grizzly River Run and everything else there. But other than that, like I just,
Yeah.
unless I had DVC, and then I
Mhm.
could use my DVC over there, which is honestly the only reason that I would ever purchase DVC is if I could guarantee that I would have time in California because that would get me out there more. I would do that in a heartbeat. But of
Let me
course, there's
touch on
only 3
that
resorts.
guarantee there, Robert, because
Yeah, there's
every
no
time I've
guarantee.
tried to use those points, those rooms are booked.
Yeah,
And the problem with the DVC, yeah, I get 12 months for my home or 13 months for my home resort, but I think you only get 6 or 7 outside, and by then
yeah,
everything is booked up. And they're so limited. Now they have the new property. When I tried using the points before, couldn't find anything. We
and
canceled 2
that's
trips because we couldn't get a room.
and that's
Yeah.
why you have to specifically buy into those resorts, which you can't do anymore. Now they are doing the expansion over there, which they are going to add more DVC rooms, which will of course, you know, um, be available to purchase. But then again, what is the cost going to be per point for those rooms? Because those have to be, well, I mean, they don't have to be, they are in high demand. So you're looking at a much higher price per point for those rooms just because they're at Disneyland. They're at, it's a resort on Disneyland property. So is it worth it?
Yes, yes. But yeah, if ever you have a chance to go to Disneyland, no, don't feel tied that you have to stay at one of the three hotels. There are plenty of hotels across the street, all the streets, that can provide a lot of the amenities that you would need. And like I said, you said, really, what's the other perk? Of course, using their pool, maybe entering the park in the morning. Some days there's a magic morning, but other than that, we can all go to the restaurant. We can all hang out at the lobby.
When you have those off-site hotels, do they charge for parking?
The ones that are right across the street do.
Okay.
The ones that are right across the street do. But when you go a little bit farther out, then no. But it's so close. It really is so close. Sometimes it's closer than the parking structure.
Now,
So they do charge for parking.
Yeah, because it's not going to be taking the car to the park, but just having the luxury of being able to leave, explore the rest of California, explore the rest of Los Angeles, Anaheim, the whole area, getting between LAX or whatever airport you're flying into, and coming in. Just knowing, because even when I was in Florida, when I'm renting a car, I mean, that was the nice perk of the free parking on Disney property. I've stayed outside once or twice, and they try to nail you for this fee, that fee, hidden resort fees. Crazy.
And that's another thing to keep in mind, too, just based off of my experience, and I'm sure Luella could back me up here, but getting from LAX to Disneyland, it was like an hour ride. When we went to the Disneyland hotel, the first time we stayed there, we rented a town car, and it was about an hour ride to get there with traffic and everything else. So it's not something that's close. So if you are going to do something off property, that's something to keep in mind too. Not saying that there's transportation to that Disney provides transportation to the Disneyland hotel, because as far as I remember at the time they did not.
No, they didn't.
But
not that I know of.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some transportation you can do some research for, but there's nothing in specific from Disney.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed too, and I've only stayed at a handful of properties in the Anaheim area or around Disneyland, is a lot of the properties are older. They've been there forever. And do you feel, Luella, that you have to be somewhat selective and choosing, because there are a lot of options. There are some options that are relatively a lot less expensive than others. The price it kind of fluctuates really high and really low. Do you feel you have to be really selective?
I think it just depends. I'm kind of like, some of them provide breakfast, some of them don't. But for my family, I'd love to get breakfast. It's an added savings. Some of the hotels are good neighbor hotels, meaning they have a deal with Disney, and some of them not. But the ones that aren't doesn't mean they're not good. It's just some people have their favorites, so they go back every year. So a lot of times people would just try to find the right price point and then the right location. Some people love to stay with the Hilton, so you just go with that. So I don't think they go wrong. A lot of these ones that aren't real big chains, they're family owned, and their family has owned them for years, since the 50s when Disneyland first opened. So, they take a lot of pride. I think one of my favorites is,
I know people
Candy
really like
Cane.
the candy cane.
Yeah.
That's what I was just about to say.
There's
People
a
really like the
shuttle,
candy
but
cane.
I love the Hiltons. There's Hotel Indigo. I mean, you can't go wrong
The
with
Hotel
a lot
Indigo is awesome. I've stayed
Yeah.
there. It is a fantastic resort. The rooms are ultra modern, and they have the comfiest beds.
And so, some of them could use a little work, but I think they all match their price point, to tell you the truth. So a lot of times people will decide, like, how the proximity of the park, because you do, at the end of the day, do you really want to walk really far? A lot of them don't, so but even though, like I said, Disneyland Hotel is really not that close to the entrance. I mean, you can take the monorail, but it's not that close.
Well, I think my only hesitation as someone who lives in, the reason why me personally, I'm more selective is because, in Orlando, we obviously have the on-site resorts, and then we have, for all our parks, Universal, Disney, even SeaWorld's building an on-site resort. And the on-site resorts are great, but when you generally get off-site, you have to then kind of get very selective because a lot of the off-site resorts in the Orlando area, especially on 192 and International Drive, which I mean in the past have been huge tourist corridors, are can get very sketchy very fast. I mean,
Mhm.
you can find yourself in a very interesting situation. When I personally, the last time I personally looked for hotels in Anaheim, I saw the older buildings and I get a little nervous when I see things like that. But you saying, they're family run, that means more than anything because obviously that's their pride and joy. They're going to take care of it, and really go all out for their guests because that's a family business. I get that. So that makes me feel a lot better about staying out there. But then again, just to give you an idea of why I'm I'm always so cautious when it comes to that.
No, I think you should be cautious. And so, look at the ratings, look at the location. Some of them are way behind the Disney park. And so you're near the vicinity, but you're not near an entrance. So you're going to have to be walking a little bit. So I wouldn't maybe want to stay, unless it's like on Harbor or Catella, or unless they have a shuttle. But, look at, and a lot of them are like Hiltons or Hyatts, and they provide breakfast. And so those are things I think if you want to feel more secure, more comfortable, because I've stayed in Orlando at, one of the Homewood suites, and, it wasn't that close, but they provided breakfast and it was nice. It was nice to have that, that amenity. And, we had a car, so it wasn't that bad.
So when I had stayed, speaking of the transportation, only stayed once. I visited there once. It was a long, long time ago. I relied on the airport shuttle, not the airport shuttle, so the hotel shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
Huge waste of time.
Yeah.
Terrible mistake. Without a car, one drop off, one pickup usually for the day. And if you're ready, you're going to sit there and wait for them to come back because they're not at your beck and call. Yeah. And it's a little harder. So you really have to consider getting back and forth. If it's not a walkable distance, what am I going to do for transportation?
Yeah.
So
are you talking about here at Disneyland?
Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a good amount of time waiting in that parking lot for that silly shuttle. And they don't care if they're late because it doesn't matter.
Which is it's very similar to what we have here in Florida. You have some hotels that do their own transportation, and any hotel that runs their own transportation is going to be the best because they're going to be on their own schedule and kind of come and go whenever they want. But a lot of, let's just say this, if you're staying in Orlando and you see a resort that their transportation is done by Main Gate Transportation, which a lot of the lesser expensive resorts are, you're going to, like Michael said, one drop off in the morning, one pickup at night. That's it. And then they're shuttling to 8 or 9 different resorts. So you have to wait to go to every resort. And the same applies to Disneyland. And I've seen this in person. You would think because it's a much more compact area that this wouldn't be a thing, but it is.
Yeah, I think a lot of people utilize like an Uber or Lyft so that they don't have to wait for the shuttle. So there's all those options. Of course, you have to pay for that, but I think at the end of the day, people are willing to pay.
And they have a great pickup spot too for Uber and Lyft right outside. Or at least they picked me up right outside of Disneyland there. So it's right by the entrance. So you really don't have to worry, about getting an Uber. And the thing for me that I realized real quickly, because when we were staying at the Hotel Indigo, I thought when we were driving there, I'm like, oh, this isn't that far. This is not that far. I could walk it. I'll be fine. It's just a couple of blocks. It's not going to be that bad. And then when I tried to walk it, I had to get an Uber half.
Oops.
To be continued.
Yeah. But I understand because at the end of the day, you're tired, right? You've walked
You're tired.
Like thousands of steps, and now it's time to go home. Kind of go.
Yeah.
You're tired.
Now let me ask you this though. This is something. So when I went to Disneyland, the last time I went to Disneyland was was a little while ago, and this is when they had Fast Pass Plus, which was honestly an amazing system there. I thought because you would pay your money that day, you would have it attached to your pass. It would work just like Fast Pass, and then you would come back to the attraction. Everything was day up. There was no advanced planning, and on top of that, at the time, it also included access to PhotoPass, so you could have your
Mhm.
PhotoPass pictures as well. It was honestly, I think at the time that I did it, it was about $15 per person. And it was so worth it every single time. I always did it. Now, in the age of Genie Plus and everything else, what does that look like now for Disneyland? Is there planning required? Can you still kind of go, day of and do things? How does that work now?
I'll be honest, I haven't utilized it. So it because it's an added cost to my Magic Key or our annual pass. But
Okay.
I mean, it's pricey. You say $15. I'm looking right now. Genie Plus is $30, and so I'm not
Yeah.
sure if they adjust the price for how busy or how not busy. Same there.
I know they do over here. I don't know about over there, but they do that over here. I
Mhm.
would imagine that they follow suit over there and do the same exact thing.
Yeah, because I think it's exactly the same over there at Walt Disney World to just make it a seamless program for both, East and West. But it does come with PhotoPass for the same thing, and we just don't have as many ride photos as you do over there. But you can easily spot a PhotoPass photographer. So yeah, I haven't had the benefit, maybe because I don't want to pay that money. And I'm taking I have a different experience in the park than someone who's going to be there all day. But I think when the crowds are just too much, everything that I've heard is that it's a great program, right? Because as soon as you finish your ride, you choose your ride. Um,
Ch-
so
ch- I mean, I'm if that's how it works at Disneyland, that's awesome.
mhm.
I can tell you at Walt Disney World, it kind of gives you it kind of tells you where you're gonna go next. Like you can maybe there's a little bit of like choose your own adventure, but for
Mhm.
the most part, they kind of tell you this is what's available, and you kind of select in advance. I want this, this, and this, and then you kind of go from there. At least that's been my experience a few times that I've used Genie Plus. I've honestly found it to be a mixed bag because I can tell you that there's been experiences where um, I I will be in the park, and if it's like say 3 o'clock and it's in the park, I can guarantee that I'm probably not going um
Yeah.
to be able to get any fast passes. So
Yeah.
that has happened. I mean, I remember one time specifically, we went into the park at like this is when it first came out, and it was like 4 o'clock. We got there because we had left work early that day to go, and when we got there, we paid for the Genie Plus, and we couldn't utilize it. And a cast member, we went to guest relations and said, "What the heck?" And they gave us fast passes for the attractions and refunded our money and basically said, "Don't do that again because you
Oh,
won't get anything after 4." I mean, that's
oh,
literally what they told us.
okay.
So
Okay.
so that is something to keep in mind if you are in the parks. I would imagine it works the same in
Mhm.
and over there as well. But yeah, yeah, I honestly don't know. I've never used it over there, but I would imagine it works the same. So if you are doing it, make sure you do it. Get there early to really utilize it because if you don't get there early and you're using it for half the day, it's just not going to work out for you.
Yeah, I would agree. So, but if I ever use it, I'll give you I'll give you a review. But for people I know use it, besides the price point, they they said they couldn't have achieved as much as they had without Genie Plus.
And I think it's almost the same out here where locals are going to be less inclined to use it.
Mhm.
But if you're traveling and this is your one time that you're going to be visiting Disneyland or Walt Disney World, you want to maximize your time. And I've already spent God knows how much on this ticket and room package, and what's another $30 per person? So you just do it and you write it off, and I'll pay it when the bill comes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just yeah. It's just hard to, like I it's just it's hard, and now I think they've increased the price again. If I remember correctly, it was supposed to go, what was it? It's like I heard like maybe $45 to $50
Wow.
per person for a day, and that's like a quarter of the ticket cost again per day. I mean, if you have to do that, for a family of four, that can get
Yeah.
very expensive really fast. And I understand why we have a need for things like Express Pass. I mean, personally, with other parks, mainly my Universal Park pass that I have, having that Express Pass after 4 p.m. with my pass is a huge deal because I use it over the weekend and it made a major difference. But if it, I wish there was an option for us as pass holders to be able to add that on to our pass at a cost. But again, I can understand why they don't do that because it fluctuates based on the crowd level that day. So that way it keeps that low. So those lines are short. People aren't necessarily going to pay $45-$50 a day for Genie Plus. So that keeps those lines really low in the lightning lanes. So I understand why they do it that way, but it just, I don't know. Honestly, I say we just go back to just no fast pass, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to you provided it now to fully take it away.
Mhm.
That'd be really difficult.
the only reason why the price increased is because they can. People are going to
Yeah.
keep paying it. Hey, we're going to charge you $8 for a pretzel. Good, I'm still going to buy my pretzel. Hey, you
Yeah.
know what? Genie Plus used to be 30. Now it's 45. All right, well, take my money. As long as Disney fans keep paying, Disney will keep raising the price. Unfortunately, but that's just the way it's working out.
Yeah.
I say
I
that
would like it because
Go ahead.
at Universal, I mean, if you stay there at East Coast, if you stay at one of their top tiers, they provide, that Express Pass.
Yep.
So, I mean, that
Yeah.
would be a perk. If you stayed at one of the three, you get maybe some like Genie Plus. I think that would be.
And
it'd
you,
justify,
this Express Pass at Universal is a game changer. You can
Yeah.
get through so much.
Oh
So,
gosh, yeah. I mean, if we stay where
Yeah.
we go there, I mean, we calculate it. It's like stay at the Hard Rock or pay. It's almost equal. So we always stay at the Hard Rock so that we can get that
I
Express.
always calculate based on how many people are going
Yeah.
and how many Express Passes I would have to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I shared this last week, but my sister and my nephew are coming in at the middle of June. And it's cheaper. I already have my pass, so I don't have to worry about it. But for them to both get one-day ticket plus the Express Pass, it is cheaper for me to get a room on my Florida resident discount. We have a room for the three of us. We're all getting Express Pass, even me, without buying a ticket. It came out to significantly less than if she just bought the ticket and the Express Pass outright, and we're getting the free room. So it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, which is right there. So that'd be, hey, Disney, think of adding that.
But again, they don't have to because the rooms are always full. The parks are packed. It's like, why do I
Oh.
incentivize these people?
That is true. That is true.
The reason I still believe this to this day, and I've said this all in the 10, 12 years I've been doing podcasts and commenting on all these things, is the reason why people are not flinching is because they're paying for everything monthly. Most people that book a Disney vacation, they have people telling them, they may travel once every other year, and now they're saying, well, for just $5 more a month, you can have the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. And they don't add up the cost in their head and say, well, it's really costing me $500. They just say, well, it's only $5 more a month, or I can do this for this little more a month. And I really do feel like people, they just, when booking a Disney vacation, they just go all out and they just don't care about the cost because it's like they say, well, you just put $200 down today and then you figure out the rest later. And you see some people will pay it monthly, and you see some people will just wait till the end, and then you see the even more people who want to save more that go to Target and buy the gift cards where they get like 5% off on the gift cards and do that whole thing. And there's all kinds of different ways, but people never, they never necessarily look at the full cost of a Disney vacation. If they did, they wouldn't go to Disney. They break it down, and most people, this is their yearly vacation or their every other year vacation, and they don't see it as they don't see that one big chunk, and they don't, that's just my opinion. But
yeah, well, I think they did a good job then to not kind of hide it, and also, hey, what's this? Now you get to go to the Halloween party. So, I mean, that's the goal, like to get you to come and stay.
yeah, get you to spend money on dessert parties that are meaningless.
Yeah.
So speaking of Disneyland, I know we talked about the hotels, we talked about Genie Plus, we talked about being select over there. When it comes to the parks themselves, so I guess we'll start off with Disneyland. Now, the unique thing about Disneyland, or just the California parks in general, is they're more locals parks. They are designed more for locals. The pass holders get a ton of incentives. They definitely cater more to the locals. When you are going to the parks, do you have, being that it's a locals park, I'm sure you have a different plan of attack than you would when you come to Walt Disney World as far as attacking a day at, let's say, for example, Disneyland. How exactly does that look for you?
Well, my advice always to people who are not necessarily local and they're coming to the parks, I always encourage them to get there right at opening. You can accomplish a lot if you get there at opening, rope drop, because locals don't want to go early. Like for me, I'll go after work or I'll go later on in the day because I've done everything. And so I'll do at my convenience. And so people a lot of times notice how much busier the parks are after 4 or on the weekends. And so that's like some advice I always tell people, like go right when it opens. Go, like you'll accomplish so much if you get there. Like even if you don't have that early 30 minutes, if you're not staying at a Disneyland property hotel, you get there right at opening, you're going to accomplish a lot, because no one's really, like locals won't really go right at opening typically. And so that's like my big tip, is to really accomplish, all the attractions you want to do, is to come before all the locals start coming after 4.
And one of the things that I noticed over there versus over here is, and a good example of that is Main Street. So Main Street at Magic Kingdom, when you get there early in the morning, you can have the trolleys, the horse-drawn trolleys. You can have the omnibuses. You can have all the different vehicles that they have on Main Street. You may get that till 10, 11, maybe 12 if you're lucky. Then the park balloons up. And then you don't have that anymore because the park's so full. They can't be, blocking the streets with these vehicles. It's not something really that they should be operating because of the capacity, the amount of people in the park. Where at Disneyland, it may get 4 or 5 o'clock, and you still. I know this is kind of a weird benchmark, but it is something that I noticed. That they still are running these modes of transportation, and the only reason they can do it is because there's not. You're right. The park doesn't fill up till like 4 o'clock, and they can run this stuff all day. And I mean, honestly, I was in heaven because that's one of my favorite parts of Main Street is, taking the trolley, taking the omnibus, taking these modes of transportation all around Main Street, even if it is, just a couple blocks up and then a
Yeah,
couple blocks
yeah,
back.
yeah.
But the fact that they can do that all day really says a lot to how different their crowd levels work throughout the day, when they get busy, when they don't get busy.
Yes, and so that's kind of like my like really big tip is to come early and accomplish as much as you can before the locals start to come. And then there's also a trolley over there at Disney California, which is so
Hmm.
adorable, and they run that all day. So that's fun to ride. And but yeah, that's one of my tips.
That's awesome. Now, when it comes to so does that involve? So that I assume that encompasses everything, but between attractions and everything else. I mean,
Yeah,
y- I mean, personally, it's been I've been to like I've been there. You get there early in the morning and you head to something like the Matterhorn or something and get it just knocked out. Just get it knocked out quick in the morning, and you can get pretty much walk right on. But as that day
yeah,
fills up. And now I don't know how that works now with Galaxy's Edge and all the stuff that because you guys have that over there too now. But I totally do agree with you there. And I will say, the Keystone attractions, yeah, that's been my experience as well. So yeah,
yeah,
definitely some good advice there. Now, one thing I will tell you though is just based off of my experience, and you can either agree or disagree with me, but I will say one of the best restaurants in any Disney park, um, top 5 for me is the Plaza on Main Street at Disneyland. They have an amazing breakfast with the characters. Character interactions at Disneyland is completely different than character interactions at Walt Disney World. It is night and day, and it is infinitely better at Disneyland because people don't necessarily, when a character comes out on Main Street, for example, people don't swarm them
yeah,
necessarily like they do here in Florida. When a character comes out, it's like everybody's entitled hat goes on, and they say, "Hey, I paid the money to be here. You have to dance for me. Dance now."
yeah.
And
I'm
they,
gonna have to agree with that, and I'm also gonna say characters walking around Disneyland Hotel are a lot of fun. So I don't know if
yes,
you've seen that, but they just stroll and no one
hmm,
really bothers them, or they feel like this is your house and maybe they'll do a selfie. But I think that has to do with a lot of locals as well.
hmm,
When I see a character, I kind of just wave and then
yeah.
move on. And so, that's not to say that people aren't going to line up and you have that, but it's a little bit different. I when I see it at Walt Disney World, it's like, wow,
Well, well, I can tell you this. So going back to the Plaza, when you go to a restaurant at Disney World and it's a character meal, it's a production. You have a character handler,
Hmm.
and then the character goes to each table. They say hi, snap a couple photos, they go on to the next table. It's bing, bang, boom, done. The first time I went to the Plaza, and I had the breakfast there. Um, eh, what was it? Tigger came to our table, and he was just interacting with us, joking with us, and we were like playing hide and go seek or something with I
Yeah.
was covering my face and acting silly, and he ran. I did like this. I put my hands over my face so he could go hide, and he ran outside the building to the window behind us and
Yeah.
just put his face up against the window. And I was like, in that instant, in that instant, I was immediately sold on how much better character interactions are at Disneyland, because that right there was one of the coolest experiences. And on top of that, when he initially came out, because they have like those old saloon doors
Hmm.
inside in the
Yeah.
plaza, and
Yes.
he came out of the door and it's like on a spring, and he like fell to the ground and he was like holding onto the door, just being very dramatic. And you
Yes.
never get that type of interaction at
Yes.
Walt Disney
Yes.
World. It's
Yeah.
it's very it's very calculated, and you
Yeah.
don't get that.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it has a lot to do with having so many locals that aren't going to
Hmm.
bombard. I mean, that's not to say that's not going to happen, but it's not as like fanatical.
Hmm.
And so that's that's a little bit different with the park.
If I'm
I
local
also,
and Pluto is right up front yesterday and he's up front today and he's going to be up front tomorrow, I don't care that Pluto's there anymore.
yes,
First time visitors, non locals. Oh my God, Pluto's here. Yeah, no, he was here for the past 3 days. You and your family are going to keep walking. Everyone else
yeah,
might stop. I don't
Yeah.
stop anymore.
yes.
I don't
So
have
Yeah.
photo pass. I don't need ride photos. I don't need character photos. If I see one that I haven't seen, maybe I'll take a quick picture. But how many shots with Minnie Mouse do I need? So
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're
that's the
done.
different things. And
Yep.
and then
And don't one last thing I'll say about the characters is don't be shocked if characters you see characters riding attractions. I know the first time that I went, Belle got on the carousel with us and just rode the carousel with us, and I was like, "What is happening here?" I was like, "This is amazing."
yeah,
So so
we just
so
wave,
that
right?
type of
We
stuff
just
does
wave at them.
exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you have the opportunity to go to Disneyland and see it, even if you've been to Walt Disney World multiple times, it's just a different experience. And also, I think because of the locals, I always say Google kind of see what sort of day it is. Disneyland celebrates a lot of Tiki Day, Bats Day, Dapper Day, so you'll see people in the park, locals just dressed to the nine like Dapper, or all with their lightsabers. They do celebrate that, and it's a lot of fun. And then because they're all doing like that, it leaves the rides with not very long lines because they're so busy taking pictures. So that's another thing too. That's kind of fun when you can go to all and celebrate it too. Like, all the different days. There's a lot. There's some that shock me sometimes.
Well, that and then they have the special parties out there.
Mhm.
Like they had the Disney afternoon party and things like that. So, it's like honestly, like I love Walt Disney World to death, and I love Epcot, and it will always be my favorite theme park in all the world. But Disneyland and California Adventure, just in the way the things that they do out there for the pass holders, the parties that they have, like the Disney afternoon party, the character interactions, things like that. It's definitely a little bit more my speed. I also really like too your counter services out there. When you come to Walt Disney World, you're generally used to getting a burger and fries. That's pretty much a counter service experience that you're going to have that's universal around the parks. You may get a frozen pizza tossed in there every once in a while, but it's generally going to be burgers and fries or a frozen pizza. When you go out to California or Disneyland, you have like actual like full meals. Like you'll go and like they have Rancho del Zocalo, which is Mexican food. You
I
have
love Rancho del
um
Zocalo.
oh,
Yeah.
it's easily one of the best theme park. That's probably my favorite theme park restaurant of
Mm.
all times. And then you have like Flo's V8 Cafe, which
Yeah.
has amazing breakfast tamales. Like there are, and it's not just Mexican food. There's other food as well, but it's not just burgers. You have Plaza with the chicken meals. Everybody goes and gets the chicken meals at the Plaza and has a picnic in the park.
Yeah.
These are amazing things that happen over there, and it's just
I think
I
it's because you can't just serve burgers and fries when you're having locals who
Mhm.
come over and over and over. So there's always going to be a new pizza at Pizza Planet that I'm always looking forward to try. And and people would say it's weird, but here in California, it's not weird when you have a cheeseburger pizza, then you have a charcuterie pizza, and then
let,
so
let me
that's I think what they also are trying to make us spend money.
Well, this has always been my thought, and Luella, I want your opinion on this too. I really feel like the reason why that is, especially when it comes to the food, is because you're so close to all these other options that are right outside the park that you could easily just leave and go across the street from Disneyland and go find something else to eat not that far from the park that you could walk to versus eating in the park. So they know that they have to, try a little bit harder versus here where you're in a bubble and they can serve you slop on a plate. And what are you going to do? Because if you don't have a car, you're not going anywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree that. Like, how are you going to get me as a local to spend money
Mhm.
on food? So, and I'm only going to be there about a couple hours. So I think I would probably have to agree with that.
And that's why you have the most amazing churros ever invented. So yeah, so I think we can all agree that the theme of this thing is Disneyland is completely different because they really do have to compete with their surroundings when it comes to certain things because they you can easily just leave and go somewhere else and get some other food. I mean, don't get me wrong, Disneyland has some amazing restaurants and some restaurants that you might not think are amazing, but are pretty amazing. I think Goofy's Kitchen is an amazing restaurant. The PB&J pizza, it sounds crazy, but it's actually really good. There's all kinds of options. What is it? Lamplighter Lounge at
Oh,
California Adventure is absolutely fantastic. And talk about views. I mean, you're right there on the water. How can it get any better than that? So Napa Rose. I mean, you really have some amazing restaurants at Disneyland and Disney's California Adventure, and I think it really sets apart the tone. And the other thing is too, downtown Disney over there, while it is, it is very nice what it is, it's not. I would say that too is different than say our Disney Springs, which is kind of, although they have the dining and eating, it's still, it's different. It's not,
well,
I
there's a
don't know
lot
how
of
to describe it.
construction going on right now, and there's going to be a lot of improvements, a lot of
Hmm.
really good restaurants that are not traditionally in downtown Disney are coming. So, it's going to be really exciting what's coming. So, yeah.
The only thing that just to kind of wrap this up here before we end the show here, the only thing that I can say, um, with Walt Disney World is I really hope that in the coming years, that as bad as this sounds, I really hope that we see, with Epic Universe and things like that. I hope we see some more competition because I really think that will competition is always good because it'll force change, and I hope that that's something that happens when people start spending more days at Universal, or maybe just taking a trip to Universal and not Disney, and taking that money away from Disney. Maybe it'll force some change in some of these things. Now obviously we'll never be what Disneyland is because we're not a locals park, but it would be nice to have some of those things that they have in Disneyland over here too, even just a small amount.
Yeah. I love Walt Disney World. I think but competition is good. I think that's what's going to force the change of just keeping up to date when Universal opens everything up. I think that will be good because then you don't want them to just rest on their laurels, so.
Michael, do you have anything to add to this? Did Michael freeze?
There we go. Okay, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
there we go.
No, I'm just looking forward to getting back out to California. I think it sounds like when I'm hearing, I think Walt Disney World has a lot more planning going on as far as planning hotels. And maybe it's a lot more research for California to, if you grab a room and you get there and it's not quite what they wrote on the website or what the photos promised, you're either going to have to pivot and rebook or just decide you're going to ride it out. We won't stay here again. So I guess research is key to not ruin or disappoint yourself when you get out there. Depending upon where you're flying in from, it's a 5-6 hour trip from this coast to go out there and walk
Mhm.
into a hotel and go, this is a dive, or I got hit. I know out here there are tons of hidden resort fees, this fee, that fee. So do your research, do your due diligence, see what's important to you. Is it distance? Is it the breakfast? Are you saving money? And
Mhm.
stay away from the 1 stars.
And I will say, I know you say it's a 5 to 6 hour. That's just the flight. We're not talking about getting to the airport, getting the bags, TSA, all those other things. That could be, you know, a full day's worth of travel just to get to a room. And if you get to your room, at 8 at night or so on and so forth, and it isn't up to par, that can really set the tone sometimes. So be very selective. Check TripAdvisor, check the big websites for reviews. I mean, I've done it myself. The few times that I've been out to California, and keep in mind too that even some of the well-known brands can have properties that are not, you know, the best, that are due for a refurbishment or something of that nature. So keep that in mind too when you're looking at. Just don't just choose something because it's a Hilton. Look at it and see what exactly you're getting, because you could get something that is not that great. And I'm not saying most of the hotels in that area are amazing. Everything that I've stayed at has been absolutely amazing. But in anywhere you go, there could be
Yes.
those situations where you get something that is less than stellar.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's show. We are going to close things out here. Now, I did want to let you know, number one, I'm still working on the app for our podcast and everything else, and getting the attractions answers GPT, so we can get you guys talking and helping with your planning when it comes to those. I'm still working on that. Next week's show, we have a special guest coming on next week. And I'll give you a little teaser for next week's show. He's actually going to be contacting us or speaking to us from Alaska. So we're actually have a very interesting show next week. We should have some very interesting topics to discuss. Um, and it should be really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's going to do it for this week's show. We, of course, thank everybody who watches. We had I know we had some live people watching with us live tonight. We really appreciate that. And we definitely thank you for joining us every week. As always, you can catch us every Tuesday at 8:30, unless noted. Like last week, we had to do it on a Thursday, but typically we do it at 8:30 every Tuesday. And then we get you live every Friday. Our podcast is live on all your favorite podcasting platforms. But that being said, like I always say, if you can dream it, you can do it. And that's going to do it for this week's show. And I will say, have a great rest of your weeks, guys. Rest of your week, guys. Did you guys have anything else to say before we end the show?
Not at all. Looking forward to next week.
No. Have a good
All
week.
right. Good.
All right.
See